Welcome back to Crystal Chronicles month. What, you thought my only life was the life of a king that I had? No. I also have the life of a Darklord. In Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, My Life as a Darklord, you play as Mira, daughter of the Darklord, presumably the one from My Life as a King, as this is a direct sequel to that game. They made a sequel to the Final Fantasy city simulation game. What? They made another city game? No. Oh, that's bright. No, actually. This is not a city simulation game. This is a tower defense game. For some reason. So we're not going to have a big story section for this one because this game is even cheaper than My Life as a King. The story that's there is delivered through text almost exclusively. And the basic gist of it is the monsters ran away after the miasma cleared the tower. This big, sort of Howl's Moving Castle type tower, just filled with tons of floors of monsters. They ran away after the miasma cleared, and they went into this tower. And Mira, being the daughter of the Darklord, is kind of running things around here. And because she's like, well, I'm a Darklord, I gotta be evil, she declares war on the human race. That's it. That's the story of the game. You crawl around the world, it's stage-based, and adventurers come into your tower and they try to climb it and you murder them. You just kill everyone. And that's all that happens in this game. You even meet up with some of the characters from My Life as a King. Spoiler alert, the bosses are the secretary lady, the knight guy who helps you out, and the final boss of the game is King Leo. Who else but King Leo? It's a short one. It's a pretty simple one. Let's get into what makes it unique. The gameplay is not your average tower defense game. It's a tower defense, as in one tower. And if one adventurer makes it to the top of this tower, you lose. You don't place towers, you place floors. And the floors have monsters in them. And the monsters have powers as well, and everything's a little different, everything's got its gimmick. There's a weapon triangle, you Fire Emblem fans know, or maybe if you played Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings, it's a totally different triangle though than that game. So there's melee adventurers, which are super effective against ranged, which are super effective against magic, which are super effective against melee. There's also non-typed, like generic people, and there are white mages, who just kind of heal themselves and they don't have any special abilities other than that. They just kind of climb and heal, and they have a lot of health, so you gotta drain them. But how does it play? So, one by one, the adventurers are going to climb your tower. They come in packs. Sometimes it's just one, usually at the beginning of the round, and they'll sometimes come in a party. But no matter what, there's only gonna be one adventurer per floor. You start with nothing, and you gotta immediately build a floor or two. And all of the floors have special little conditions. Each floor has an artifact, and the artifact is what gives it its special trait. Sometimes it's simply just the artifact will do a small attack to the adventurer, even though the monsters are there to do the bulk of the attacking. You can have a floor that heals your monsters, or defends your monsters, or boosts your monsters' attack, and there are a handful of other floors that I really love because they're fun and they do gimmicky stuff. Each floor comes with a certain number of slots to insert monsters in, and then you have a complete floor. Whatever the gimmick is, plus your monsters. Your monsters might have powers like slow down, or stun, or the most useful one is guard, which guards the artifact of the floor from getting hit. And the thing is, basically it's a trade-off of attacks. Like with ATB bars, the monsters have ATB bars, the adventurers have ATB bars. So the adventurer will hit a monster usually. Sometimes they'll sweep the whole floor. Sometimes they'll directly attack the artifact, or whatever. There's a bunch of different rules. So if you have the guard ability, a monster will always take hits for the artifact, kind of like Cecil's cover, the knight's cover from the other Final Fantasy games. If an adventurer kills a monster, you're able to replace it right away. If an adventurer kills an artifact, that entire floor gets demolished and you go into a frenzy trying to replace it and build more stuff to stall the adventurers some more. What's really tough about it is, again, one adventurer per floor, which means if you have a floor that's really devastating, like a ton of monsters, you put all your money into that floor, and one person's fighting it, and another adventurer is coming up behind him, he will just skip past it and go to the next floor. And it's like, dude, I put that there to kill the adventurers. Now this guy's just like stalling it, and the next one skipped it over, and I gotta build more stuff. And it's like in Tom and Jerry, you know, the one where Tom is on the train and he's like, oh wait, no, that's Gromit. I'm thinking of Gromit from Wallace and Gromit, where he's on the train and he keeps putting down the tracks as it's going, otherwise it'll crash or whatever. It's like that a lot of the time when this game picks up in difficulty. It's pretty intense. And your floors and your monsters will also have melee, range, or magic traits. So you gotta build your tower accordingly. The really useful thing that I didn't even realize until a couple levels in is before you enter a level, you get a list of, or really just a number of which classes you will be facing. So it might tell you 10 magic adventurers are gonna show up, and like 5 ranged and 0 melee. So at that point, you kind of tell yourself, I don't need to put down magic monsters at all because that would be super effective against melee who's not showing up. You get me? Those are the easy levels though at first, because obviously when you get to the later levels, they all show up equally and you just gotta figure that out. Sometimes the solution is as simple as making sure you got that type advantage. Sometimes it's really about using your floors to your strategic advantage. There are a lot of gimmicky ones, like I said earlier, and even some particularly powerful monsters, like my favorite, Gygus. He takes up 2 slots because he's an absolute unit, and he smacks like entire health bars out of people regardless of their type. It's great. There's Kain, like Kain from Final Fantasy IV, and Porum. Gosh dang it, I forget which one is which every time, Palom or Porum. The boy. The boy is Palom with the L. The boy, yeah. So Palom has the power to slow down adventurers. He's really useful too. They crossed over with Final Fantasy IV because the After Years was also on the eShop, I guess. I don't know, but you get to use them. It's fun. I have 2 particularly favorite floors. One of them is called the Purgatory Press, which doesn't have any slots. You can't put monsters on this floor because it's just one giant clamp. And every adventurer that passes through gets hit by the clamp and reduces their health by half, guaranteed every time. It's really not the most useful most of the time, but if you're facing like a boss or something, you just wipe half the boss's health, like you slap that down first floor. And it's like, okay, so now he's at half health and he's gotta go through the rest of my tower. He's dead. It's great. My favorite floor though is the Abyss Crane. The Abyss Crane is like a crane game. Again, no slots for monsters because it doesn't need it. What it does is takes the adventurer, plops them down a hole, and they have to go through the entire tower over again. I can't tell you how many emergencies this got me out of. Like, again, one guy makes it past your floors, you lose. So he's climbing that ladder and I'm like, oh god, pause. Abyss Crane. Gotcha. And he falls all the way down and he's got no chance. No adventurer can go through the whole tower twice and live. So that was awesome. And aside from the monsters and the floors, outside of levels, you have the ability to upgrade things with your money. There are 2 currencies. One is like the entire game currency that you earn after beating levels. You use this to upgrade monsters and stuff. You can give them more health, boost their abilities, and attack even. You can also use this to extend your tower. You start off only able to build 5 floors, but you can go to 10, 15, 20, and I think up to 25. Like, you could build a massive thing with this. And if you go off the beaten path, there are even items that you can use. Any item that you obtain will give you a one-time use per level of just like a magic attack or a heal that'll sweep through the whole tower and hit all the adventurers. Like, you know you're getting hit by melee guys, so you can use a magic Fyra spell and it'll burn them all and take a huge chunk of health away. Another thing that got me out of a lot of horrible situations, just spamming some items because he broke through my defenses and then he dies and I'm like, okay, phew. The other currency is the one that you just have per level. So it's the currency that you spend to build floors and add monsters and stuff. You can get items that boost the amount you start the game with, but you keep earning Every time you kill an adventurer, you get some more money, and then you can keep building like classic tower defense stuff. That's the gist of it. It is a really unique and interesting little tower defense game. I actually enjoyed it a lot. Who wants to be a king anyway? I'd rather be a Darklord. The one downside I'd give this game is that it is really slow. And I mean like literally just waiting for stuff to happen all the time. You'd think it's so that you can have time to build, but literally as soon as you open the menu, time freezes in the game. There's kind of no need to have the adventures take long at all, because you always have that ability to just pause it and do whatever you need. Oh my god, he's about to cross to the end, but I have a bunch of money. All right, pause. Build 3 floors. Throw monsters into them. Throw an abyss crane at the end. And unpause. Oh, he's not going to make it. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't need to take super long. However, I did emulate this game because I didn't even mention at the top of the show, like My Life as a King, it's WiiWare exclusive. Can't play it outside of emulation. And Dolphin Emulator just so happens to have a speed up function built in to any game that you play. It came in lots of handy. Thanks to that, I beat this game lightning fast. Usually howlongtobeat.com gives me a good idea of how long these games will take, but now you're looking at the guy who has the fastest time on Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles My Life as a Darklord on howlongtobeat.com. 7 hours flat. And it's all thanks to the speed up emulation thing. And that's it. It's surprisingly complex, especially compared to something like Crystal Defenders. Remember that? That was like a joke compared to this game. But it's weird because I don't really see a lot of people talk about this game. There's nostalgia, there's real nostalgia over My Life as a King. That game was one of the like quintessential WiiWare titles. But Darklord, not a lot of fond memories. It's reviewed more poorly than My Life as a King, and I'm like, why? This is like an actual game. My Life as a King is like, you know, it's fun, but it's like not really anything. This is a real game. What happened? What went wrong? Why do people not seem to like this game very much? Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about DLC. We mentioned DLC in the My Life as a King video. The conclusion was that the game would have been better if that stuff was just there and available to you, but it's all there as a post-game reward. Extra levels that you can't beat until you finish the game, new stuff that you can't make use of until New Game Plus or something like that. It was ultimately not the worst, even though it was a lot to buy if you wanted it all. My Life as a Darklord DLC is entirely pay to win. And they hit you at every angle. Any little thing you can possibly monetize in this game is monetized, to the point where it feels like mechanics were put in the game so that they could later charge for more of that mechanic. We should just go down every category. Category 1, costumes. I don't think I mentioned costumes. Well, you can dress up Mira in any costume that you can unlock. I don't even know if you unlock costumes in the main game at all. They're not just aesthetic, they also come with a little bit of a bonus. So one of the costumes will start your round with more money. Right from round 1, you'll have a little bit more money so you can bolster defenses early on. There are outfits inspired by Rydia and Purim from Final Fantasy IV. Some of these costumes give you another magic spell to use, another attack to hit monsters with, all of these things that are useful but one-time uses per round. Overall, the costumes are not the most invasive thing. They're not necessary, but they are there and they're stupid. Oh, and you can even get Catgirl Mom from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time. Who could forget that character? Category 2, monsters. Of course, there are a slew of monsters you can use in any floor, and they all do slightly different things and have slightly different stats. Why not make the player pay more to have even more monsters? As I mentioned before, you can recruit Kain into your battle. That guy listens to anyone, doesn't he? Yeah, in case you didn't guess earlier, all of the Final Fantasy IV stuff is all paid DLC. You can use Kain, you can use
Palom, $2 a pop for those guys. Some of my favorite monsters, including Gygus, the big fat guy who punched everybody out in like one hit. Of course, that was DLC you had to pay for because he was so much cooler than the rest of the monsters. All this and 10 more additional monsters, all paid for piece by piece. Category 3, floors. You got some decent floors in the base game, but you could use some better ones, right? Well, guess what? I read through the list of DLC and it just so happens that all of my favorite monsters and floors were DLC. The Purgatory Press, the Abyss Crane, those are the two I specifically mentioned, and they were all both DLC in separate packs, plus 5 other floors you can pay for. Category 4, items. I explain what the items do. Most of them are just spells that can damage a bunch of adventurers that are going through your tower or cure your monsters or something like that. I am not sure if you even unlock items in this game naturally. I think all of the items I had at my disposal that got me out of so many situations were all paid content. And I didn't even realize there are passive items. Some of these you do unlock over time because it's sort of a progression system. All of the passive items, what they do is they give you more money to start off in the first round. Something I was wondering the whole game was, man, these first couple rounds are always just ridiculously easy. I just build a ton of stuff immediately because I have so much money. That's kind of a weird balancing thing, a difficulty thing. I wonder why they did that. Oh no, they didn't do that. I just had access to all 5 paid separate DLCs that boost the amount of money you have. 5 separate DLCs, $2 each, just to boost your money a little bit. You do unlock these kinds of items through the game and on side quests and stuff, and it's kind of like, almost like leveling up. You do these extra challenges and you'll be prepared for more challenges later. Or you could just pay $10 to get all that money and just have a ball the first round every time. The game costs $10. And finally, category 5, levels. The only somewhat reasonable DLC that isn't straight up pay to win. You can buy additional levels to play. You can do this in My Life as a King, and as I mentioned in that review, it's not really much of a big deal because levels aren't really a tangible thing in that game. At least the levels in this game are actual levels that you can play, and they're new. But they're also still gonna leave you with the yucky feeling, particularly in the additional chapter of story. You can buy separate levels that'll just appear on the side, but there's also, after the 5 chapters of the main game, you can pay for chapter 6. Now the credits do roll after chapter 5, and there's not much of a story to begin with, but you'll still have the characters going like, but wait, there's more. This isn't the end, oh, don't end it, there's gonna be more. They'll just say that casually, and you know what that means, oh, you gotta pay more money. Chapter 6 costs $5. That's half of what the game costed, and the game gives you 5 chapters. But the thing with Chapter 6, along with all of the other DLC levels, is that they're really hard. Like, crazy hard. In a hypothetical situation where the only DLC offered was more levels, these levels would be, like, balanced a little better. They'd be like, okay, they're hard, you gotta test your might, you gotta be really good at this game, but you can get through it. But in this situation where there is so much extra paid content entirely revolving around just making the game easier, you can't help but feel this is just more taking. Oh, well, you're willing to pay for more levels? You must be willing to pay a little bit more to make those levels easier. Like, I don't understand how you can do them without some of this extra stuff. But also, I've had the extra stuff from the beginning, so maybe I'm overblowing it a little bit. But from what I hear online, it's very hard. People agree with the few people who have actually played this game. I couldn't even find footage for Chapter 6 online, and no, I didn't beat it. Screw that. The additional story isn't even anything. It's just that after the main story is said and done, they go on a vacation to an island, and the island has more levels. That's the story. This was really a rude awakening because I did not realize what the DLC was until like halfway through the game. I didn't realize that I owned $57 worth of DLC for a $10 game. It is awful. It is egregious, inexcusable, predatory. It is terrible. This is the prime example of horrible DLC. However, as I've said in the past, I judge these games based on how they play today in their quote-unquote best versions. Well, there's only really one version of this game, and it's free via emulation. And if you're gonna go through the trouble of scouring through the internet to find a copy of My Life as a Darklord, whatever list you find it on, it will be right next to My Life as a Darklord DLC. I don't even think you can pick and choose. As far as I know, I think all the DLC is bundled in one download, at least where I found it. Maybe you can find it different somewhere else, but like, who's doing that? Who's uploading all 50 additional DLCs as separate downloads? No. So, if you are playing this game in 2023, you'll probably have all the DLC for free. And the weird thing is, the game itself is still good. You'd really expect like full mobile game type situation with this. Like, it's not even a game to begin with, it's literally just a vessel to have somebody pay more. But no, there's like a real solid tower defense game in there. How enjoyable is it without DLC? I'm sure it's fine just getting through the first 5 chapters. It might be pretty hard towards the end because they want you to pay, but you can get through it. And maybe that satisfaction of not paying would have gotten people through it pretty easily. But that doesn't really exist anymore. The act of paying for this game is irrelevant. Which is weird that I've spent so much time talking about it. But it needs to be said, this is truly an exploitive era Final Fantasy game. And in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, normally that would massively affect how I rate the game, but I don't think it will. The game's still fun. I had the DLC. It was really great using all the crazy monsters and the extra floors and stuff, and it was no cost to me, so I'm not really complaining. As well as the addition of that ×2 speed that Dolphin Emulator offers. It's truly the definitive experience. You're just getting an objectively better time playing this game than any schmuck who paid any amount of money for it on Wii U. I mean WiiWare. And I recommend you do if this sounds appealing to you, if you're into tower defense games. I think it's better than My Life as a King. You know, it's like an actual game. And I still see a lot of nostalgia for My Life as a King. A lot of people are hoping for an eventual remaster. Well, I hope they remaster Darklord too. Like, why not? Why not do like a dual bundle or something? Why not include all the DLC? I thought that might be possible in this day and age, but then I realized they remastered the original Crystal Chronicles and they added DLC to it. So maybe be careful what you wish for. We can hope either way, but for now, this game is lost to time. And we are nearing the end of Crystal Chronicles month. I hope you enjoyed our time here as a Darklord. Next week, it's time to go away from WiiWare forever. It's time to go away from DS. No more of this small-scale spin-off type stuff. The Crystal Chronicles series comes to an end with a full-blown, traditional, home console, high-budget release. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles: The Crystal Bearers. See you next week.